I'm trying to get recruited, or I just love to play. I just love to compete.
Yeah.
And that's taken away from me because of an injury. Um, there's absolutely a mental and emotional response that comes with that. And so we spend time working with athletes to help them
Hey,
recognize.
everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this particular video, I have a conversation with my sports psychologist, Dr. Tim White. He is the owner of White House Sports Psychology right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And I want you to listen in as we talk about all things regarding our mental health and wellness, athletic performance, or just our overall lifestyle. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this video as we discuss sports psychology with Dr. Tim White. For those of you that don't know, if you don't mind just introducing yourself, kind of tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Tim White. I originally started my career as an athletic trainer in the sports medicine space, but I also had a very keen interest and curiosity about the sports psychology space. As an athlete myself, like you, I very much could have used these services when I was competing, and I was always fascinated by things like the team that is up by, you know, a few touchdowns at halftime, and they end up losing the game, and how does they lose, or vice versa? How does the team still have hope and come back in the second half type of thing? And so as I was going through my studies and started to get exposed to sports psychology, I knew it was something that I wanted to explore a little bit more. And to keep the story short, I was able to eventually do a master's in sports psychology. And that's really what put me on the path that I'm on today. And again, to keep the story short, I eventually started using sports psychology strategies and techniques with the athletes I was helping rehab from injuries and surgery, and seeing the benefit and value there was something that eventually led me to go back to school, get another degree, this time in counseling psychology with an emphasis in sport, so that I was well-rounded and able to address not just the performance aspect, the mental performance, the mental mindset aspect of things, but also mental health and well-being. So today, in my practice, we're able to address, the mental side of sports and competition, as well as athletes' mental health and well-being, and ultimately, that's something that I'm very proud of and excited to share throughout the community, including some of the people like Mac.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes. I love what you said about the performance, but also the mental well-being, because a lot of times when we think of psychology, we think of depression, anxiety, PTSD, or maybe some other mental health disorder. Most people know what a sport is, but when you put sports psychology together, I don't think the population is really familiar with that. So I would love for you to kind of elaborate on the mental well-being, but also the mental aspect of kind of preparing for sports performance, and kind of how you guys, go through that with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really critical point because there is so much confusion. There's so many different people kind of talking about the mental health and well-being and the performance of athletes. And there is this question of like, who do I talk to? Who can truly help me in these areas? And so when we think of sports psychology, I like to think of it as kind of an umbrella term. And so, on kind of one side of the picture is your very traditional and very classic sports psychology or sports performance things, such
Mhm.
as handling stress in a competition, or um, being consistent from practice to game day, or managing pressure and expectations. And we see so much of that these days with our clients, who have hopes and dreams of competing in college, and sometimes that gets a little bit messy as you start to get into things like NIL and parents and coaches and so on. And so there are these pressures and expectations, and have to perform well and can't make a mistake, and all of those things occur up in the mind, and they
Right.
ultimately affect how we compete and how we perform. And so that is how we describe your kind of traditional or classic form of sports psychology. At the same time, we know that athletes are human just like anybody else. We all face the challenges of day to day life. we encounter struggles in relationships, and maybe issues at home, or the stresses of a work or job type of situation, along with things like your classic anxieties and depressions and
Yeah.
so on. You, as athletes, it certainly works to our benefit to be an athlete, but at the same time, it doesn't prevent us from encountering those challenges. So we know that there's kind of two sides of the spectrum here, but we also know there's a bit of overlap where maybe I'm struggling, 2, 3, 4 competitions in a row, and I'm getting some chatter from the fans, or teammates are vying for my position on the team, or I'm getting critical comments from a coach or whatever, and that may start to affect how I view myself, how I think about myself, my overall mood and demeanor, which of course is going to influence my next performance and my mind during that performance. And so sometimes you end up in a little bit of a vicious cycle where we're having to kind of look at how much of this is just a straight performance and managing nerves aspect of things. How much of this is maybe a little bit more mental health oriented, and how do we determine which interventions to use based on what the puzzle is starting to look like?
Yeah, that's great. Wow, our mind itself is just so complex. Human body in general is so complex. So I'm glad you kind of explained like the overlap, because that is so true, and it's awesome that we have people like you as resources in the sports performance community that can really identify those things. So, but I also want to go back to a little bit about your background, because you mentioned you were an athletic trainer. And so athletic trainers, you're dealing with those acute injuries and the injury rehab aspect. And so kind of talk about how your background as an athletic trainer influences what you do now, more specifically the injured athlete. So as an athlete is recovering from injury, they'll come and see me for the physical stuff, but they may come and see you if they need some help with just focusing or anything related to the mind and how they can approach the game and get over, fear. I see it a lot, fear avoidance type stuff. Like they're afraid of getting back on the field, even though they're strong, they're stable. I've done everything I can do from a physical therapy perspective, but I would love for you to kind of touch on that a little bit about how they can recover from an injury, how they get back into performance, into the game, from a mental health perspective.
Absolutely. I think the world of injury and getting back to sport is a perfect example of that overlap. For so many athletes, they're participating in their sport, and competing is a really big part of their identity and their sense of who they are. And when I have a season ending injury, or even something that maybe it only takes me out for 4 weeks, but 4 weeks is 4 weeks. And so for that athlete, there's this sudden sense of loss. It's almost kind of like a grief kind of response. We hear the word grief, and most of the time we think about things like death, but we can also experience some of that grief type of sensation or experience in so many different ways, including injury, and the ability of, okay, I'm missing critical games, or I'm missing part of my senior season, or I'm trying to get recruited, or I just love to play. I just love to compete.
Yeah.
When that's taken away from me because of an injury, there's absolutely a mental and emotional response that comes with that. And so we spend time working with athletes to help them recognize and understand what's happening for them mentally with regard to their injury. And we also dive into more of that mental skills and strategies piece that's more of the kind of classic sports psychology, where how do we use different relaxation techniques to help you when you're doing some mobility exercises or some stretching, or how do we use mental imagery to help you generate a stronger, higher quality contraction when you're doing the different rehab exercises that we're doing. I love to use mental imagery also in the space of helping people prepare to return to sport, and the ability to see themselves competing again, and envision and really kind of experience inside their mind the same movements that they did as an athlete before they were injured. And that has a huge impact on someone's sense of confidence, their ability to trust whatever body part is recovering. and ultimately the ability to get back to not just playing sports or playing their sport again, but competing at that same level they were at before they get injured.
Yeah.
That is a really key part in honestly, we actually see it in the research where there's a lot of people that some don't ever get back to their sport. Some get back, but they're not really the same. And then, of course, get back and return to that same kind of pre-injury form. And so, among the other skills and strategies, mental imagery is one of them that we use quite a bit to help people regain that same thing.
Yes. That's good. That's awesome. So we've talked a lot about the athlete and a lot of examples we were talking about. And when I say athlete, I mean, that's a very broad term, but we've kind of used examples with specific sports, so team sports. Do you provide services to those individuals that are just a recreational runner or just a master's athlete, or maybe they're just, the mother or father that just likes to stay physically fit? They do competitions whenever they can, but it's really just to keep themselves healthy. But they also may find themselves either with an injury or struggling to complete some of the activities that they have, the goals that they have from a physical activity perspective. So do you guys work with individuals that fall into that category?
Yeah. I think, that's a really important part of kind of the overall sense of health. We tend to think about health primarily in terms of physical health, heart rate and blood pressure and strength and flexibility. But of course, mental health is getting so much more attention these days. And knowing how much the mind affects the body and vice versa, the ability for someone to stay active. I'm actually thinking of one client right now pretty vividly based on your description, because she's no longer a competitive high school or college level athlete, but she's still very, very active. And the impact of an injury on her ability to be active and do the things that she truly enjoys and things that are really important to her, fitness and health and even the socialization that comes with being a part of a running club or any other organization. When those things are important to you and they're no longer happening, it's important to address that. And so we absolutely think it's critical to include those people as part of our clients.
Yeah, I am, again, excited that we had this discussion, and I'm sure it won't be the last time that we hop on the phone or a video call and have more talks about this, because as I get clients and patients coming through our doors, I'm sure it'll come up that the mental health aspect of preparing them to recover from injury and get back to their sport or whatever activity they want to get back to doing. And so with that being said, as we close out this discussion, I want you just to kind of give our listeners some information on how they can reach out to you and to your staff if they are interested in learning more or seeking your services.
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest way to learn more about the services we offer, the company that I'm leading and organizing, is to visit our website, which is whitehousesportpsychology.com. On that page is a page dedicated to injured athletes, and we're actually in the process of updating that. So as of the time of the recording, of course. But again, the website's the easiest way to get a hold of us. If you want to reach out directly to me, email is a great way to get in front of me. And that email is tim@whitehousesportpsychology.com. And that is probably the two best resources for getting in touch with us, learning more about what we do, and seeking some assistance along the recovery process.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate it. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate the examples that you gave. I'm sure this is going to be extremely valuable to our listeners. And again, look forward to talking with you some more in the future about this topic. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation and the chance to talk. I really enjoy spending time together and talking the way we do. So thank you.